It's all right. If they have to speak, we can make sure they announce. Sounds like we're having some.
All right. If anyone, any other staff or anyone online could introduce themselves, please.
Patrick Monroe,
Hey.
CDOT staff.
Travis Miller, CDOT.
Drew Ritter, city staff, CDOT.
Isaiah Washington, CDOT.
All right. That looks like we got it. First off, what do we have as far as deferrals, Dave?
We've got four deferrals, three shown on the agenda. Petition 2021-209 by Coastal Acquisition Entity, petition 2021-213 by Goldberg Companies, Inc., petition 2022-071 by MTB Holdings, and the final petition that we have is 2022-065 by Griffin Family Investments. All are looking for a deferral to January 31st, with the exception of item number 3, which is MTB Holdings 2022-071, which is requesting deferral to May 30th of this year.
Excellent. Could I get a motion to defer?
This is Commissioner Welton. I would make a motion that we accept these deferrals.
Commissioner Russell, second.
Properly moved by Welton, seconded by Russell. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are deferred. All right, let's jump into the game. Starting off with item number 4 on our agenda, rezoning petition 2021-232 by Chick-fil-A. John, or?
All right. This is 0.88 acres bound by the east side of Randolph Road, west of Colwick Road, on the north side of north of Sharon Amity Road. It's an existing Chick-fil-A restaurant near the Cotswold Shopping Center. It is currently zoned B1 neighborhood business, and the proposed zoning is B2 conditional, or general business conditional. The 2040 policy map recommends neighborhood center for the site. The proposal would demolish the existing drive-through and basically rebuild another restaurant with EDE and drive-through service uses, but it would be a drive-through only service. It would also allow a no indoor seating through the petition. Other uses permitted in the B2 district would be permitted as long as they were also permitted in the B1 zoning district. But some of the more auto-intensive B2 uses, such as a gas station, would not be allowed. It indicates the proposed building with 2 drive-through service lanes and a bypass lane around the site, and access is via right in, right out at the southern end of the site, and a right out only on the north end of the site onto Randolph. And then this is a change, but the access on Colwick would be a entrance. I think it's entrance only, and constructs a 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk on Randolph Road, and provides a utility easement for future construction of a 12-foot multi-use path. Since the hearing, there's been some changes. It prohibits the number of uses that are not compatible with the site, including car washes and automotive service stations. It proposes walk-up area and patio dining on the right-hand side of the building. It restricts the rear driveway at Colwick to an entrance only, and contributes $70,000 to the city of Charlotte to be applied to the cost of installing a signal at the intersection of Randolph and Publix access point access point, or the cost of other improvements at the intersection. It is inconsistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for the neighborhood center. However, staff is recommending approval of the petition. There's no outstanding issues. Staff feels like the request is reasonable and based on the existing use and the site design intending to improve functionality of the use and improve pedestrian access around and in the site. The proposal replaces the existing building with EDE with no indoor seating with with accessory drive-through facilities and multiple lanes that wrap the building. It improves pedestrian access to the site with clearly marked pedestrian walkways from the public sidewalk to the building and parking areas. Replaces the existing back of curb sidewalk with an 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk, which improves pedestrian safety along Randolph Road. And the proposed site design increases drive-through capacity and functionality to improve issues with traffic blocking the sidewalk and backing up onto Randolph Road. It's in an area with other businesses, including auto-oriented uses with drive-through service lanes, and the site is currently developed with a EDE with drive-through service lanes. So although this site proposes no indoor seating, it also provides a patio with outdoor seating. The approval of the petition would change the recommended place type from the neighborhood center place type recommendation to commercial place type. I'll take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Because it's been a couple months since public hearing, any significant changes since the hearing?
Other than what was on the changes after the hearing slide, there's not been
Okay.
really any other changes to the petition.
Always like to make sure. Don't know what my response will be. Any questions for discussion here? Who would like to go first? Terry, go right ahead.
Terry Lansdale, just want to thank the petitioner for reaching out and having a discussion because many of my questions were resolved earlier, but I wanted to specifically spend some time on the egress issues with CDOT. So we have, if you look at the lower right-hand corner before the pedestrian signalization or pedestrian crosswalk on the site plan, it requires 2 lanes of traffic to be serviced at the pickup window. And then we have an egress lane of only 1 egress lane. It's 12 foot wide at that point. Can you talk a little bit about how we manage that outflow from the parcel when we have an expectation of 40 cars per minute? 40 cars on the property in queue for this site. Can you talk about the egress efficiency? And the timer that you hear is the average time it takes for the individual car at a Chick-fil-A to be served and exit the building. So talk a little bit about the egress for that.
So a few of the issues that you raised are really going to be operational issues addressed by the operator of the Chick-fil-A. And, you know, the 2-window pickup is going to be improvement for stacking and processing on the site. You know, where the exit lanes of the Chick-fil-A will be in regards to this access, it's really going to be, you know, and we've talked about it with them, but it's going to be an operator issue where I would imagine the external, the lane closest to Randolph Road would likely be directed to that access. And one of the benefits of this plan is the inside lane could actually be directed around the facility and to the other exit point if needed. Currently, there's 2 order windows or order locations on the I guess, plan view north portion of the property, and there's no way currently to navigate around them. There's a median in the parking, and there's just no way to do that. So this plan does provide some areas to navigate around the facility, as well as, you know, some will be directed to that exit. But essentially, you know, the volume of traffic, we don't have any way of estimating that it's going to be less or more. It's still a 2-drive facility. And so, you know, we don't have information on the processing time or things like that. But I will clarify, there's not a 40 car stacking. I believe the proposed stacking was in the neighborhood of 25 to 30, I want to say. But essentially that's, you know, that it's going to be a lot of operator responsibility on site there.
Sure. Thanks for the clarification on the stacking, and I was taking into account the on-site parking as well with that number. A couple other things here, since you mentioned it around the bypass lane. Did you guys have any comment on the reduction of a 14-foot lane to a 10-foot 6-inch lane along that setback on Randolph Road? Did you guys have any comments on that?
The bypass lane closest to Randolph Road, I
Correct.
guess. No, this is going to be designed for passenger vehicles. And that, that if it was in a right away, that would meet a minimum for passenger lane. You can see the Plainview West lane is a little wider, and we did have discussions on how deliveries would occur within the site. And we had discussions about potentially combining the two access points into one. But because of the needs of to be able to deliver to the site and how those vehicles would navigate, it had to remain as two access points. But the lane to the Plainview West is a little wider to accommodate that.
Sure. Thanks very much. If I may, one more follow-up on the transportation question. I'm really struggling, and I talked to the petitioner about this, and really focusing my comments on egress here. But I'm just a bit confused where we're pushing the 12-foot lane on the enter and exit portion, and then the 22-foot lane for exit at the, sorry, I don't know how the references for north and south on this, but on the other end. But I'm just trying to understand how this will have an improvement over the situation that we have now. Just with line of sight, with pedestrian and active transportation conflict at that point. Just trying to get a grip on that from you guys.
Yep. So two parts to that. I'll address the width portion first. The easternmost drive is the passenger vehicle entrance and exit. So that's really designed for passenger vehicles. The westernmost, as I mentioned, is where you're going to have your delivery vehicles egressing the site. So it's wider to accommodate the radius that you need to accommodate those heavier vehicles. As far as active transportation and conflicts, the biggest improvement in that regard at this site is not only for vehicles, but also pedestrians and bicyclists at that easternmost driveway. Right now, there is some signage restricting movement, but in reality, anyone that's been by that location knows that vehicles turn wherever they want in and out of that driveway. And this design will restrict it to right in, right out. So when you go from a intersection that has left turn capabilities and you remove left turns, you're reducing the conflict points between all types of modes. So, now that entrance is no longer has left turns. Vehicles are turning in one direction, and also pedestrians and bicyclists have a better expectation on what a vehicle is doing. So I would say that entrance specifically is greatly improved from that regard.
Thanks. And following up on a transportation contribution of $70,000, is that right, from the petitioner? Is that sufficient for a hawk signal at the intersection as a temporary solution, or is that sufficient to cover the intersection improvements?
So a hawk signal would more than likely be greater than 70,000. There was a contribution to improvements at this location from another petition recently. I believe it was 100,000. And so improvements like this often are incrementally addressed, and we can't have just one developer contribute or necessarily build something all the time. We would love it if they did, but it's a way of getting dollars that can go to public benefit improvements.
Thanks very much. And I'll wrap up by saying, this is a challenging consideration for this property. The business is an existing business. It's a product that we're familiar with in this community. in other locations and across the state. And having the commentary from the neighborhoods and having their input to their desires. I think CDOT, you've addressed many of the questions for me to resolve some of the transportation issues, but we are excited to see the potential improvements along Randolph Road associated with this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else? Gaston.
Hi, Commissioner Gaston. I just wanted to say that I was excited to see the change where you could at least walk up there and pick up a meal and not just have traffic going around to collect to get meals. I was there last week or the week before, and I actually saw someone try and walk up and go in and get, and I was like, you can't do that right now, but they will have that in the future if this goes through. So I thought that was exciting. So actually someone would walk up there, and I didn't think anybody would walk up there. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that change. Thank you.
Commissioner Russell.
Thank you. This question is mainly for staff. So like, this is a challenging situation, so I really do want to understand information. So this is an information gathering question. So understanding that you're constrained by the zoning laws that are in effect and by the fact this is an existing use, can you kind of walk me through the rationale for approval? And this is honestly just, it's going to help me make a decision. So I just kind of want to understand from your point of view so I can see that what you're seeing in understanding the approval.
Dave, you want to take a stab, or I can, doesn't matter.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of options on a project like this. Existing situation, they could potentially take some by right alternatives, either as it stands or down the road when the UDO would come online to potentially go through a project, maybe not have the exact same outcome, but still provide drive-through service at this location. So I think if this were a brand new standalone project that was not constructed and didn't exist, we'd probably look at this a little bit differently. But given that it is existing, our approach to it was try to work through, and get some meaningful contributions to improvements along the streetscape, for some of the traffic improvements that were needed, the contribution to potential hawk signal or other signalization in that area is certainly a good outcome in some ways as well. So we had at least an opportunity, I think, to work through some of those kinds of commitments that we could get out of a project like this versus not moving it forward from a staff standpoint, and maybe down the road in June or when the UDO would come online, I think they would still, like I said, be able to do this. They may not have it be just a drive-through only. It may have to continue to have dine-in service, but I think the outcome would still be primarily the same with, a drive-through lane or two. So, we kind of saw it as an opportunity to work with the existing business, get some improvements that we know could be beneficial through this process versus just having it happen by right, and we really not have much of an opportunity to really have any impact on the project other than just the ordinance, and that would be it. So I think that's kind of the approach we took with it. Again, if this were a brand new, nothing on this site, want to build a drive-through, I think you'd see staff probably have a little bit of a different approach and stance on it. But given that it was existing, I think that's where we just wanted to try to work out a solution that could provide some benefits and ultimately leave that discretion up to, y'all as a recommending body and then council as a deciding body.
Thank you. That's very helpful. It's just good to kind of wrap my head around what staff is seeing, because, I'm seeing it from my perspective. And so it's good to know, what other perspectives are being included when we look at this. So that's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? I've just a couple of points. First off, I want to point out that the Wicks neighborhood did have someone speaking at the public meeting. That was one of the touch points I was looking for, honestly, as I approach this. Otherwise, I think Dave's logic applies in a lot of ways. I would love anything that we can get from down the road. I understand. I'm not saying tonight, Jacob. Anything on how we turn this into that better pedestrian environment that I think we hope the contributions we've recently received and the changes made within this are able to come to fruition and get an idea for timing on that. Again, I don't think it should hold up this process or this vote, but I'd love to hear more about how we're able, what the vision is for this part. Once we have this, once we have these additional assets that we can put towards it. Any other comments or questions? I think I'd love to hear a motion then.
Commissioner Welton, I'll make a motion.
Almost had someone else. Go ahead.
Oh, did I take this from you?
Go right ahead.
Deal. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2021-232 as it appears before us and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
I second that.
Thank you. Properly moved by Welton, seconded by Gaston. I'll put this to the voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have no in opposition, so that passes unanimously 7-0. All right. Thank you, staff. I know that was a bunch of work. Appreciate it. Definitely. All right, moving on to item number 5, rezoning petition 2021-237 by Baloo Properties LLC. And we'll go back to John.
Yep. All right. So this is approximately 2.08 acres located on the east side of Providence Road, north of Sharon, Amity Road, and Andover Road. It is currently zoned R3, single family residential, and is proposing UR2 CD, urban residential conditional. You'll notice if you stay on this map just for a second, the parcel just to the, I guess, plant kind of map south east. Recommended their residential for less than or equal to 8 DUA. That was also rezoning not that long ago for UR2 to allow attached residential as well. Policy map recommends neighborhood 1 place type for the site. And the proposal is for up to 20 single family attached townhome dwellings and 4 buildings for a density of 9.62 units per acre. The height is limited to 40 feet. There's a 75-foot setback from Providence Road where they've located their tree save. That's consistent also with the rezoning that was approved to the south as well. They have a garage setback of at least 20 feet, minimum 2-car garage, and each so that each unit would have basically 3 parking spaces, including the driveway. They're providing 2 parallel guest parking spaces on the private alley as you come into the site. A 6-foot tall brick wall with masonry columns along the rear property line adjacent to the southeast parcel. So that's the area in blue there. And a 20-foot Class C buffer adjacent to the other single-family parcel on the northern part of the rear property line. Those buffers are basically in agreement and discussion with those adjacent property owners. So this property owner preferred having the 20-foot Class C buffer, and this property owner was okay with just having a wall. The access is from a private alley off of Providence Road with a leftover that would be for left-hand turn lanes heading south on Providence. The petitioner may coordinate with the adjacent developer to the south to provide an internal connection if it's desired by that adjacent developer and they mutually agree upon it. Same potentially for the northern access or northern stub of the alley would be potential for future connection to the single, I think it's a condo or apartment units that's under single family zoning, but if that were to ever redevelop, potentially a connection there if the 2 parties were to agree. Constructs an 8-foot planting strip and a 12-foot multi-use path along Providence Road. And I think that concludes all the major requested details. Since the public hearing, there's been a few changes. It's been a while since this one did go to hearing. And since then, they've provided a 10-foot side yard to the north against that single-family zoned parcel adjacent to the single-family zoning. There's a 5-foot side yard to the south adjacent to the UR2 zoning. It locates a proposed solid waste and recycle facility internal to the site, kind of in between these two sets of buildings. Previously, this site plan might not be up to date, but the petitioner is going to get us a more up-to-date one. But those recycle and solid waste containers will be repositioned to there. It allows for a future possible connection to the north, which I had already mentioned. Staff recommends approval upon the resolution of technical issues. I did spoken with the petitioner since the agenda was developed, and they've agreed to address those issues. So staff is recommending approval of the petition. It is inconsistent with the 2040 policy map recommendations for neighborhood one place type. However, the petition provides a 10-foot side yard adjacent to the single-family zoning, which is consistent with other urban residential zone development approved in the area. It locates the dumpster internal to the site away from single-family uses. It's located on major thoroughfare, suitable for moderate density and attached residential development. Its petition is proposing 20 single-family dwellings for a density of 9.62 units per acre and provides a large setback along Province Road, which is also similar to other residential development along the corridor. Plan limits the building height to 40 feet, which is the same as single-family zoning, and provides a 20-foot Class C buffer on the northern edge of the rear and a 6-foot wall adjacent to this single-family property on the southern edge of the rear property line. It would change the recommended place type from neighborhood 1 to neighborhood 2. And I'll take any questions.
Questions? We'll let Welton go first and then Lance.
Okay. John, am I reading this correctly? On Plan East, there is no proposed going through on that little alleyway there, correct? Yeah. Okay.
That's correct. There isn't one. That they have basically noted that on either end of that, they would be open to a connection if the parties basically come to a mutual understanding and agreement to do so. I don't know if this one has made, this rezoning has made it into land development yet and what's being discussed there. Jake, you're nodding your head like you have some information.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think this one was just a bad case of timing as far as that connection.
Yeah, because
and I believe that the adjacent parcel there has come in for at least one round of review, but it's been 6 or 8 months, so not sure what the status is.
I was trying to remember and I thought that was just a long block of stuff there. Just one other question. That's rollout that's going to be right there as you come in at the T, right?
Sorry. For the purposes of solid waste, they have to show a dumpster solid waste recycle collection location.
Okay.
But the petitioner, the developer, they plan to have a private rollout.
Okay.
Private
All right.
collection
Is
service.
this like, is there a pile of?
They have
garbage
to,
that you
they have to show it, but in reality, that's probably not going to actually be constructed there.
want? Okay.
All right, Lansdale and then Rhodes following.
Thank you. I think this is for CDOT. Do we have sign off on the left turn lane?
As it relates to them committing to that left turn lane, is that what you're referring to?
From the state. So we're going to remove
yes.
a green
This was-
median at this point and replace it with a left turn lane. Is that correct?
Yes, and this was something that came directly from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Rhodes, Commissioner Rhodes.
My question was resolved about the dumpster, so I'm all set.
Yes, that was a good one. Any other questions?
No, I just had a quick comment.
Russell?
Yeah, I think this is a good development, and I appreciate staff like working through some of the issues that were necessary to get this to an approval, because I think it really kind of helps the character of Charlotte, and it's where we need to go in the future. So thanks, staff, for that.
Very well. Any other Anything else anyone wants to bring up? Perhaps a motion?
Hey, I'll make a motion.
I got it.
Russell, hit your button again now.
Commissioner Russell, and I would like to say, having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2021-237 as it appears before us, and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Harvey, second.
Thank you. Well done, Russell. Properly moved by Commissioner Russell and seconded by Harv. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That also passes 7-0. Make my notes real quick. All right, moving on to item number 6. That is rezoning petition 2022-027 by Childress Klein. And we're sticking with John.
Yep.
Busy night.
All right, this is approximately 2.27 acres on the east side of Sharon Road, west of Colony Road, and north of Fairview Road. Currently, the site's developed with a couple bank branches, and it's just some low-scale office and retail uses, but it's right next to the Apex development in Charlotte and South Park, if you're familiar with that development. It is currently zoned MUD O from an old conditional plan. The proposed zoning is MUD O site plan amendment. So basically the primary changes would be to update that site plan to be more in keeping with what the trends are currently that's happening in this particular area of South Park. Next slide. The 2040 policy map recommends regional activity center for the place type for the site. Is really small and hard to read. Increases the maximum building height from 75 feet to a maximum of 225 feet, and increases the maximum building square footage from 105,000 square feet with up to 20,000 square feet of retail EDE uses to be the following. So previously, the old plan, it was just basically 105,000 square feet with up to 20,000 of retail. A plan amendment would change that to be up to 250,000 square feet with up to 20,000 of commercial or medical office, if it's provided, would be limited to 30,000 square feet, and then a maximum of 150,000 square feet of general office. It increases the 20-foot setback and 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk to be a 22-foot setback on Sharon Road with an 8-foot planting strip and a 14-foot sidewalk. It reduces the number of driveways on Sharon by utilizing the access to Element Way, and adds the following optional provisions. It allows maximum building height of up to 225 feet, parking between the buildings and the street until redevelopment occurs, and streetscape to remain until redevelopment occurs. So the optional provisions are basically, for the most part, to accommodate the existing conditions until such a time as redevelopment. Added an access from Element Way to Coltmore Lane. It reconstructs a portion of the signalized driveway on Sharon Road and extends Coltmore Lane through to Sharon Road. It relocates the existing crosswalk across Sharon Road to the south side of the intersection at South Park Drive and Coltmore. Had a number of TTM commitments that would be done prior to permitting and related to the signal at Sharon Road and South Park Drive. It adds following commitments for the loop trail. So in the event the building exceeds 120 feet, and actually we may want to, I think those are on the change. Can you go to changes slide? I think there's more specific language on the changes slide. Yeah. So in the event that the building height is 120 feet or below, the petitioner would make a good faith effort to enter into an agreement with the city following the terms that the petitioner would construct the loop segment described in point 2, which I think we would have to go back to. But basically point 2 or described above is that there's a segment, off-site segment of the loop trail that the petitioner would be constructing. And it's basically just to the south of the Apex development on, what would that be, Colony Road, I think. And then city pays, the city would pay for the cost of reimbursement of the petitioner or other mechanism. And then within 6 months of the approval, the city would demonstrate funding available. And in the event that funding is not available, then the petitioner would not have an obligation to construct that loop segment. However, I think the petitioner would then contribute $100,000 to the city for the purposes of the design and construction of sidewalk and/or pedestrian connections associated with the loop trail. Other changes are that they added an optional provision to allow an accessory drive-through lane for the automatic teller machine, and that's just right here. There's that one little lane there, and I think there's some existing banks in the area, and they would have an ATM. It provides the following commitments in the event that the building height exceeds 120 feet. So they would, in addition to the loop commitments, they would be providing tier 1 basic lead construction. 3% of the parking spaces would be EV installed. 7% of the parking spaces would be EV capable, and 150 feet of the frontage of the parcel that I was referring to on Camry Valley, they would be constructing the loop, is that right? Yeah, the loop project basically on that frontage.
That is a reference. That is a reference to the same.
Yeah, the same
Construction
parcel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I was getting my streets mixed up.
I got you.
Next slide. Staff has recommended the approval of the petition. Since the agenda was developed, the petitioner has indicated that they would address all the outstanding issues. So staff has recommended approval. It is consistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for regional activity center place type. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions, commissioners? Yes. Commissioner Lansdale.
Of course, transportation questions abound, as always with me. Just a confirmation that the bank drive-through is new.
So there are, I think, at least 1 or 2 existing banks on the site. So there's an optional provision to allow the existing banks to continue to basically operate as they are until redevelopment occurs. And then an optional provision to allow once the redevelopment occurs, an optional provision to allow the drive-through lane for the automatic teller machine. And the automatic teller machine isn't allowed use in the MUD zoning. But just for clarity, we wanted them to provide an optional provision for the drive-through lane as well. That's associated with that.
Thanks for that clarification. That was a red flag when I saw this project at first. The second piece is more of an esoteric question. I feel personally we made some mistakes in the rezoning just on the other side of Element Way. We see a consistent pattern every morning between 6:30 and 7:30 of food truck deliveries in the right-hand lane of Sharon Road. It's an unsafe design consideration from that project. Are we certain that we're not going to repeat that mistake when this project is developed, that we're not going to have loading and unloading of vehicles in the public right of way on a major thoroughfare in a highly dense area such as this?
Well, typically for those scenarios, CDOT, the most that we can do is just put up signs, but usually we're looking for enforcement for that. They're supposed to get permitting if they need to reside in the street or in the right of way for items like that. So there's, as far as the geometry for what they're proposing, it's more for the current traffic than it is us trying to mitigate the trucks stopping there or some of that, what you've seen. But we can look into that as well and get back to you.
Great, thanks. I'm going to probably have an opposition opinion on this particular parcel until that's resolved, but thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll just clarify that
Thank you, Jay.
there's no design accommodations for any loading or unloading along Sharon Road. So as part of the site for any vehicles accessing the site and servicing the site, all of that loading and unloading would be on site, and so not on Sharon Road.
Yeah, on the site plan, you might be able to see there's a area in the parking deck, at the corner of the parking deck. That is the area that is intended for deliveries. There's an entrance and exit into the parking structure, and then the other curb cut there on Coltmore would be for basically the loading bay and unloading and unloading.
Thank you.
Any other
John,
questions?
John, would you point that out again? I just pulled up the site plan and it went away magically. I'm not sure
So
why.
there's two curb cuts on the lower portion of the extension of Coltmore. And I
Yeah.
can't tell from here, but one of those is the entrance and exit into the parking structure for vehicles to
Oh,
park.
okay.
And then the other curb cut is the loading bay.
Okay, that's not labeled on there though. It just says proposed sidewalk planning strip.
Yeah, there's something labeled here, but then whatever that is isn't labeled, but that's intended to be, that's the service bay.
Okay. I would join in with Commissioner Lansdale's concern. I don't know that will affect my support of this petition, but I would hope we would note it.
Good points. My question actually was just how is this building going to be serviced, as we've seen these very tall, dense structures need to spend some time thinking about. And this is completely a callback to John Friday teaching me how to do this job. The parking deck is expected to be the place where the building will be serviced from for any delivery vehicles, things like that, just to be.
That's
clear.
correct,
That's a
and they would.
Understanding?
There's a walkway here so there's the driveway connection between the building and the deck. And there's an area that's striped off that's pretty wide, much wider than you would see with a typical just pedestrian crosswalk. But that area would be where any services and that sort of thing, maintenance and that kind of stuff would be, trash roll, any kind of taking out trash, all that would occur, from the building to the parking structure back to where the
Okay.
loading bay is.
Yeah. My only other question was, as we start looking at, and this is more, I guess, for Dave, this might be a good comparison proposal for us to look at with UDO as we start to talk about how do we all become prepared and trained on how to handle that transition as well. Because I feel in some ways this could fit under that system. Go ahead.
Just one more. This can be 225 max, right? Is that with bonus points and all that good stuff?
So if we go back to the changes slide, Emma.
Okay.
In order to go up, if they exceed 120, so even
Yeah.
if they don't go to 225, if they exceed 120 feet, then they'll be trying to construct this loop stuff that they've committed
Oh,
to.
okay. All
In
right.
addition to providing the lead construction, the EV capable and installed parking, and then the contributions.
Okay. And just a curiosity, you know how tall the building is right next to it?
I worked on that rezoning, but I do not remember off the top of my head what the height was.
You are supposed to remember those things in perpetuity. Okay, because it doesn't, I would venture to guess it's not 225.
No, I would say it might be just over 120 or it might be under. Don't know if anybody else remembers
Okay.
or not.
All right, yeah, because we approved the one over on Phillips Place is to something.
I
thought.
think that one was up to 210, Dave, am I remembering that right? Phillips Place?
250? Oh,
I don't
okay.
remember.
Oh, yeah, that one's got some geography in it though, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, just wondering what the skyline was going to look like.
Yeah, the site next door was 120. The one you're referencing was 250.
Okay,
And just for clarity, there was no loading areas approved on Sharon. So if they are parking on Sharon Road, then that's not something they're
Violation,
approved to do.
we need Barney Fife to get some tickets.
This is Commissioner Lansdale, if I may make a comment. Yeah, it's a backwards design, it seems, when you pass by the building. This has nothing to do with this petition, but we do see double bays open up to the street on Sharon. So that's a clarification I want to make sure of. So I appreciate the follow-up and consideration for my remarks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, hearing none. Anyone interested in making a motion?
I'll make one. Sure. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-027 as it appears before us and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Second.
Properly moved by Welton, seconded by Harvey. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And opposed?
Aye, or no.
That is 6-1 with Commissioner Lansdale opposing. And do you want to make any additional comments to your?
Yes, I would like to extend an opposition vote until associated with transportation service issues for the building and the assurance of no impact on Sharon Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. All right, moving on to item number 7, rezoning petition 2022-033 by TMBTR of the Carolinas LLC. Michael is not here. I don't fix that. Dave.
Yeah, Michael's out this evening. Thank you. So yeah, 2022-033. It's about 48 acres, 48 and a half acres on Alexandriana Road, North Lake Center Parkway, just north of I-485, zoned R3 and BP Business Park. It is recommended for neighborhood 1 and neighborhood 2 across the site on the adopted place type map or the policy map. And the proposal is for up to 353 detached and or attached dwelling units. They are proposing some innovative standards. Does limit the number of units to 4 per building. The innovative standards include internal private streets, would have public access easements. No minimum lot size or width would be required. Individual units would not be required to have frontage on public or private streets. All units will be within 400 feet of a public or private street and also reduce setback along those private streets to 14 feet from back of curb. Does construct a westbound approach of access B, which is there on North Lake Center Parkway. That would have 1 ingress and 1 egress lane and an internal protected stem of 100 feet. Also construct an eastbound right turn lane along Alexandriana Road. That would have a minimum of 100 feet of storage. A westbound left turn lane along Alexandriana Road would be constructed also with 100 feet of storage. Northbound approach of access C, which is there on the north side of the project on Alexandriana, would have 1 ingress and 1 egress lane with 100 feet of storage. Does provide a 12-foot multi-use path and 8-foot planting strip on Alexandriana, and then an 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk on North Lake Center Parkway, as well as an 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk along internal private street connections. Minimum 10% of the site would be common open space. Does dedicate a greenway easement to Mecklenburg County, which would include a minimum of the 100-foot of the swim buffer of Dixon Branch. Also provides architectural standards, including building materials. Bless you. No changes since the hearing. There were no outstanding issues at the hearing, so no significant changes made to the plan. Staff does recommend approval of this petition as both consistent for that neighborhood 2 portion, inconsistent with the portion that's neighborhood 1. But staff does feel it's an appropriate project and does contribute to the variety of housing in the area and is compatible with the surrounding residential and activity center uses in the area. And we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. I'm just
Commissioner Russell.
Commissioner Russell, just quick question. The light green area that's between all the buildings, is that just grass? Like, what is that? Is that grass or something? I'm just trying to understand what that is.
Yeah, it's essentially similar to like a cottage kind of court design where they would the units would kind of front out on green space in between them. So all the green area in between would be, private lawns or small park areas depending on the size. But yeah, the concept is green space between the buildings that are spread out throughout the site.
And is that the same for that, like, I guess the area off the main road that comes down and touches almost 485? That bit, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be part of the area that would be dedicated, the north portion, so where the kind of spine road comes all the way through and runs east-west. So that north portion that's in dark green that looks wooded, that would be the area dedicated to, to the county for a greenway. And then the rest of that south would also be open space. There's some easements and other things and creek through there. So that would be all that extra green that you see in there is additional open space that would be provided.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lansdowne.
Commissioner Lansdale, just want to have some clarification for, since I'm new here and don't really know what all is going on. Can you talk to me about the entitlement vehicle trip generation policy? I was a bit confused by your trip generation numbers and understanding that policy. So maybe just a sentence or two, or maybe we could take this offline to talk a little bit about that.
Somebody on your team.
Yeah, so the, Drew can elaborate, but generally the entitlements are based on a lot of times estimations, right? So if you have an R4 site that's so big, you can fit X number of houses, right? So the entitlement portion is an estimation on, essentially if they came in for permitting, what could they build right now without ever talking to council or anyone. And then the proposed is our trip generation from the ITE trip generation.
Yeah, I was confused. There was two different numbers in the petition that I saw, and I just was trying to wrap my head around it. But thank you for that. I'll follow up with you, Jacob, if you don't mind about that, so I can learn a little bit more and be a bit more deeper in that subject. I was asked some questions about school capacity. Is that pretty clear for the dais and others to take a look at school capacity around for this petition?
In what, I guess, I'm just, in what regard?
Just where are we at in school capacity numbers, and is it reflected in the petition?
Yeah, so the staff analysis shows that the existing zoning would generate 17 students. The proposed zoning would produce 65, so there'd be a net increase of 48 students. So that'd be the difference, and then the percentage would take Torrance Creek Elementary from 118 to 124%, Bradley Middle from 108 to 109, and Hopewell High from 99 to 100, and that's all based on school utilization without mobile classroom units. So the mobile units offset those percentages, but if they didn't have any, that's the percentages that they'd be working with for a utilization rate.
Thank you. That was just passing on that question. And the final question for me on this project, it's a struggle for me to find this information over the past decade. And what pipeline is that going through this parcel? Is it gas? Is it natural gas? Is it something else?
That I'm not aware of. No, I don't know what type of utility that is running through there.
Yeah. So what my concern is that is this section of the pipeline, whatever it is it a purging or a big clean out on this area? If this is splitting the parcel, what kind of access do we need to have for utility? And is there regular maintenance associated with this parcel for pig clean out, et cetera? But if you don't know what it is, you can't answer that question.
Yeah, that would be a question for the petitioner and their development team.
Any other? Will? Okay.
I think they're here, so if you wanted to suspend the rules, that's at
Okay.
y'all's discretion.
Was going to say, Terry, I know if you're interested in seeing if we can get that answered, we do have them in the room. As long as we can define the question, and you just did, we can suspend the rules. You can motion to suspend the rules and we can.
Sure. Is a petitioner here to, yeah. Are you willing to?
I'm willing. I don't know the answer other than a gas pipeline, but I can get you that.
Well,
It's your call.
Chair, there is no reason at this time to suspend the rules. We'll follow up later.
Understood. Understood.
Thank you.
Order, please, order. Thank you. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, and Commissioner Lansdale, I believe that's a natural gas pipeline. and don't quote me on this, but it seems to follow the same line as the one that was in Huntersville that had the issue here recently. So I believe that is the same gas pipeline that's running through.
Well, if it was the same gas pipeline, that is a petroleum pipeline, not a natural gas pipeline. So if you're talking about the Oler Park,
Yeah,
2.5 billion gallon Colonial pipeline spill, yeah, that's not a natural gas.
Yeah, you're right. I think this one is a natural gas pipeline. Though.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, anyone wish to make a motion?
This is Commissioner Rhodes, I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve the petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-033 as it appears before us and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Commissioner Gaston, I second that.
Properly moved by Rhodes and seconded by Gaston. All in favor of this petition, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No, opposed. With a clarification statement, this is Lansdale with a clarification statement. I oppose the petition at this point until we have clarity on the pipeline easement and associated access and risks with that pipeline easement. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lansdale. Dave, you've got that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on then to item number 8, rezoning petition 2022-058 by Baldwin SRE-A LLC, Hampstead SC SRE LLC, and Baldwin SRE-C LLC. John?
It's approximately 3.4 acres bound by the south side of Baldwin Avenue, west side of East 4th Street, and east side of East 3rd Street, north of Queens Road. Next slide. The current zoning is MUD O, and proposed zoning is MUD O site plan amendment. The 2040 policy map recommends neighborhood 1 on, sorry, that is not right. Go back, please. Community activity center on the site, not neighborhood 1. Next slide. The proposed site plan amendment would just make changes to some intersection improvements, and I think I could turn it over to Jake to describe those in more detail if there's questions. But there was a lot of discussion you all may have heard at the public hearing about what all those are. If you go to the next slide. Next slide. Staff has recommended approval of the petition. We've got a written commitment from the petitioner that the outstanding issues would be taken care of, so we recommend approval. It is consistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for community activity center place type, but it is inconsistent with regard to the building height because all the entitlements and building height, et cetera, were approved with the previous rezoning, and all of that is just being carried over. So the only change that's being proposed is to those intersection improvements. So I'll take any questions or turn it over to zoning committee to ask Jake any questions.
Thank you, John. Any questions, comments? This is certainly an interesting one. I had the opportunity to vote on this earlier, and we thought we had completed it, but then we found a way that the project could be made perhaps better. I think it's an improvement. Any of our cycling specialists have any comment about if this is a good or a good process method going forward? Opportunity to educate me.
Okay, I guess you guys are looking at me on that. I was trying to be quiet. I was trying to give everybody. But the layers of complexity for this is, much appreciated by staff and the community and their involvement. I did reach out to staff regarding this petition, and this is not a novel idea for a solution, and utilizing active transportation design to appease neighborhood requirements and access is a great solution. Working with NCDOT to get those approval conversations in place was also an excellent process piece, and it shows that staff is doing a great job in reaching out to the community and the state to make better design choices and accommodate all road users and all access points for not just for vehicles, but for all types of users on the road. So I think it's a good solution, and I don't see any opposition that is specific to this zoning consideration. There are other issues as outstanding with the parcel, but those are past our sphere of influence. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Failing any other questions, anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-058 as it appears before us, and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Lansdale, second.
Properly moved by Welton, seconded by Lansdale. All in favor on this one, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very well, that passes 7-0. All right, downward or upward to the finish. Rezoning, recalling that item number 9 was deferred to a later date. Moving on to item number 10, rezoning petition 2022-069 by the Fallon Company. And Holly, join the conversation.
Thank you, Rathian. This site is a little under 17 acres located along South Boulevard, Euclid Avenue, Templeton Avenue, Caldwell, Cleveland, along all there. Next slide. Thank you. The current zoning is TOD mixed use optional and TOD residential optional. That's a reflection of the 2010-022 rezoning petition. And the proposed zoning is to go to TOD UCCD and TOD NCCD, so transit-oriented development, urban center conditional, and neighborhood center conditional. If you go back to the, sorry, not you, sorry, Emma, the 2010 petition actually has a lot of similar conditions outlined. This is basically a big update to that under the existing TOD districts and with a little bit different of proposals laid out. You can go to the next slide. The 2040 policy map recommends community activity center for those portions right along South Boulevard and neighborhood 2 for the rest of the site. If this petition were to be rezoned, the new policy map recommendation would be changed to community activity center for the entirety of the TOD UCCD section, which would be just north of the Caldwell Street extension. And then it would be changed to from neighborhood 2 to neighborhood center for the TOD NCCD section. The proposal itself is broken up into multiple development areas. I can't read that, so I'll get these notes out instead. I'll just briefly go over the development areas generally. Development area A is for townhomes along Euclid Avenue. Those would be 40 feet in height. So that serves as a transition into the Dilworth Historic District, which is all along Euclid Avenue, as well as the southwest boundary of the rezoning petition there. There are multiple height caps built into this essentially. So of course, having 40 feet in height in that TOD NC section provides a better transition off of the Dilworth Historic District. Development area B1 is a max height of 65 feet, but it has a max height of 55 feet where it's within 100 feet of the Dilworth Historic District. Also has a 40-foot side yard in area B1, as well as a 15-foot undisturbed buffer. And you'll see a lot of that B1 areas where there is existing tree canopy, so that does help preserve a bit of that. Development area C is 1.6 acres of active open space. This is a pretty big expansion over what was initially proposed in the 2010 petition. And this active open space would also have pedestrian connections that go out to the greater Dilworth area. So this would really be a park-like amenity, not only for this petition and this site specifically, but for the neighborhood more generally, which is pretty exciting. Development area D is proposing residential and as well as B1 is residential and potential ground floor activation uses retail. Development area D more specifically has 75 feet in max height, so that's going up towards the base allowed height of the NC district, but it is limited to 65 feet along the southeast side of development area D, where it is closest to, again, the Dilworth Historic District. So a lot of built-in transitions here, and that's the TOD NC portion. So moving up towards South Boulevard and those development areas, development area B2 is proposing residential and that potential retail on the ground floor. This is 65 feet in height. So again, still trying to transition, even though this is one of the development areas under the TOD-UC section. Development area F is the existing Strawn Tower site. So this would remain, if it were to be redeveloped, it'd be under basically the existing parameters. So residential uses 120 feet max height. Development area E2 would be for mixed uses. So the max height for this one could be achieved with bonus provisions up to 150 feet. So anything beyond the TOD-UC base height would require the bonus menu provisions. Similar situation with development area E1. This goes up to 235 feet in max height with the use of those optional or those bonus provisions, sorry. Development area B3 right along South Boulevard is office and retail space with a max height of 65 feet. Those are basically the highlights. There are a lot of transportation provisions in this plan and a lot of connections being made through this rezoning petition. I won't get too heavily into that, but we can discuss if you have questions. It will replace the existing cat shelter pad along South Boulevard. I believe there are EV capable spaces in development area E1. Yes, 20 EV ready parking spaces. But that is pretty much the development proposed. Let me get to the next slide. No major changes since the public hearing. They addressed the minor outstanding issue that CDOT had in the transportation notes and addressed all the technical revisions that we had outlined there as well. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. I think this is an improvement over the 2010 petition, and it obviously also updates it to our current TOD districts. It's sensitive to the context of the site. You know, it's along South Boulevard, so we want to see density and intensity in the uses there to really maximize the utility of those parcels, but being sensitive to the Dilworth Historic District and the residential uses that we see to the south and southwest predominantly of the site. So it does pretty seamlessly transition. It's going to provide neighborhood amenities. I think it's a pretty well-rounded petition. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'll start with Russell and then Lansdale afterwards and Walton after that.
Okay. Now, just a question here. So development in area E1 has a max height of 235 feet. And then looks like across the street, B3 has a max height of 65 feet. I'm just curious as to what's driving the big difference. Is that just a development pattern or is that something?
Partially a development pattern. Also, I think when I looked at the parcels directly adjacent to the B3 development area, they are a bit of a lower profile. So having the 65 max height is a bit adds sensitivity to that. It's also a reflection of, or a bit of a carryover of some of the heights and that they had in the 2010 petition. The development areas E1 and E2 are still larger max heights than there were in the 2010 petition, certainly, but there was still a lower height proposed for that portion that you're seeing in B3.
Lansdale, a couple of questions, and this goes back for CDOT. Talking about the proposed zoning is going from 520 trips a day to 9,100 trips per day. I would ask that making sure that we have the traffic impact study attached to this moving forward for the final vote at the dais. Is that a fair request?
Hey, good evening. This is Patrick Monroe, CDOT. Just to clarify what you're requesting. When you say attached, what do you mean by that? This petition did have a traffic study associated with it.
Yeah, I would like to take a look at that or make sure the DIS has that at their hands as well.
Okay, yeah, we can get that to you guys.
Thanks. Quick follow-up as well. This is a bit more concerning for me. As I go through here for the comments from staff, I do not see that, and maybe you guys can clarify this, that stormwater commented on this parcel. Erosion control, no comments submitted. Stormwater services, no outstanding issues. Stormwater services, no comments submitted. This is a significant change to surface area and impervious surface for this parcel. There is a significant stream and a downstream impact, but I just don't see any reflection of that impact for these designs for this parcel reflected in the comments, and maybe staff can address that.
Yeah.
If there's.
So when it lists no comments on our staff analyses, that's a reflection of, did they have comments on the most recent site plan? And they did not. So it's listed as no comments. On the webpage for this petition, under stormwater, it should link you to Acela, where stormwater provided advisory comments. They don't provide memos anymore. They comment directly on the site plan itself. But they provided advisory comments, which the petitioner took into consideration. But that was the extent of their comments, was through their first review for stormwater. And were there other erosion control? I did not receive any comments from them directly.
Great, thanks. Maybe you'll share that link with me on this particular parcel so I
Yeah,
can be better
absolutely.
informed on that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll admit, Acela Citizen Access is horrible to try to navigate. So it's not the best for accessing comments, but since they no longer provide memos, it's all that we can do. Oh, actually, sorry. We do have a memo from Stormwater linked for this one. I'm thinking of a lot of their more recent ones that they've looked over. They sometimes don't have stormwater memos, but they will always have the full comments on plan room as well. But I'll share those with you afterward.
And I think they're doing some significant stormwater improvements over there.
They just tore up Euclid for
Yeah.
2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that project may have taken all of this stuff out of the way, but it was at least a 2-year project that Euclid was in a mess. So.
Yeah, it's certainly part of the petition, stormwater improvements, but we also have the petitioner's agent here if you wanted to ask them more specific questions on that.
I don't know if I have a specific question for the petitioner at this point. I just would have liked to have had more clarification because we have an open space parcel that's going to be transitioned to an impervious surface, and I don't see some details in the petition at this point. So that was just looking for clarification, but thank you.
Yeah, and I will also say, because these are proposing TOD districts, it is a little bit more vague essentially in terms of no building footprints, because they're just trying to provide conditions for stuff that's really sensitive, like max height. So I understand, so maybe some things aren't on there that we would normally have on other conditional site plans in more fleshed out detail. But that could also be a reflection of, these are TOD districts, and typically when we have conditional site plans on them, the conditions are more geared to the issues that are directly concerning that community or that are unique to TOD, I guess.
This is Commissioner Walton. I've just got something that's simple. It's probably a CDOT question. And I'm just curious about how traffic is going to be managed at these intersections that are internal to the project. And, I'm assuming hopefully that it's going to be always stops in there and there's no traffic lights in there. But if somebody has some knowledge about that, they can share. That would just be, if we're going, what was it, 90-some hundred trips? Yeah. There's a four-way, there looks like there's a four-way stop there that could be fun.
Yeah, this is Patrick again. There will certainly be no traffic signals internal to the development. There is the existing signal out at South and Bland that will be modified to accommodate the new leg. All the internal streets will be a series of stop controlled intersections, standard of what you would see in a neighborhood. They also have a mini roundabout down towards Euclid that'll help facilitate the movement of some of the private street connections. I don't think you see it on the image that you see on the screen, but those intersections will be stop controlled with the mini roundabout.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I had this vision of people zooming down Caldwell to get over to Rensselaer because, well, you need to get over to Rensselaer and that might be just, traffic stuff. Thank you.
Any other, one thing I do want to step in and say, so to Holly's point, as we move into more of the TOD and the UDO and everything like that, we're going to see fewer building footprints. We're going to see fewer outlines. We're going to see less of that detail in the site plan. The job gets a little bit more complex in that we're going to need to seek out those reports. Terry's done a great job, I think, learning how to do that in only 2 meetings. So thank you for that. And we might need to, I don't know, come up with more ways that we can lean on staff. I don't know, maybe we start getting links in some of our reporting. I don't know, but something we need to work on and think about. Any other comments or questions on this?
Yeah, I'll just say the one thing about the stormwater issues is, that's rarely something we see in the entitlement phase of the process because it's such a detailed and highly engineered aspect of the project. So we typically don't ever get into significant stormwater details on rezoning petitions, conditional or otherwise, just because that level of work and engineering hasn't gone into the entire site yet, because frankly, they don't know if they can even build without the rezoning being approved. So they don't spend that time and effort upfront to do that work now, but it doesn't take away the obligation for them to meet all the levels of stormwater requirements that are in the ordinance, state, federal, local, otherwise. So just because we don't see it at this stage of the process doesn't mean that it's not going to be addressed fully 100% to the letter of state, federal, and local regulations.
Understood. I did want to check with Holly. I hadn't seen much community input on this one.
Oh, there has been.
Thank you. I know they already know who to call, so.
DCA has been working extremely closely with the entire petitioner team and has only expressed support at this point, is my understanding of it. And I have not received any negative comments other than concern over the tree save area and the existing tree canopy along the southwestern portion of the site. Those have been the only comments of concern that I have received. But yes, the petitioner team has worked pretty extensively with DCA, and they have a note also on the rezoning plan about their commitment to continue to collaborate with them as well.
Perfect. That matches up with what little inquiry I was able to do.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job. If no other comments or questions, I need one motion.
This is Commissioner Rose. I'll make a motion.
Go right ahead, Commissioner Rhodes.
Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-069 as it appears before us, and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Lansdale, second.
Properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by Lansdell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that passes 7-0. Looks like it brings us to the end of our agenda, ladies and gentlemen.
I think that's it. Yep. Just a heads up, next meeting, we'll be looking at we'll have to look at dates for the rest of the calendar year for our meetings. We do have a couple that'll be a little bit off because of holidays and other things. So we'll propose some dates at our next meeting for you guys to take consideration on and vote on, so we can then establish that calendar for the rest of the year. But our next meeting is January 31st, as scheduled.
January 31st, that's what I was going to say. That's what I had. So note, January 31st, everyone. Anything else, Dave?
That's it for us right now.
All
Thank you.
right. Anyone want to make a motion that we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I agree. Let's close this meeting. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.